We're also, Ras is also recording this. He'll have it up on his YouTube channel, either tonight or tomorrow. Ras, what's your YouTube channel?
Ultra Pedestrian.
Ultra Pedestrian. That's it? That's your YouTube channel?
Yep, that's
Excellent.
our YouTube channel.
Rob Krar, you kick ass. I don't know about that, but thank you. Thank you. What is this for? All right, so welcome everybody. Turn up lights here a bit. So Ras and Kathy are also known as Ultra Pedestrian. They do some things called, essentially, a lot of people know I did something across the Grand Canyon called the fastest known time. I'm going horizontal, everybody. Ras and Kathy do attempts really known as only known times. Right now they are attempting to set a fastest known time or only known time on the AZ Trail, which is the Arizona Trail, runs from the Mexican border up to Utah, and then they return the other way. Essentially it's a 1,600 mile fast pack is what they're doing. Ras and Kathy were in Flagstaff 21 days ago. Right now they're on day 58 of their journey. They passed northbound day 37. They hit Utah on day, I wrote it down, hit Utah on day 48.
Yeah.
And now they're on their southbound journey. They have about 600 miles left in their 1,600 mile journey. So let's just get caught up a little bit. Guys, we saw you 21 days ago in Flagstaff. You've hit some pretty difficult weather, especially the last couple days. Just let us know what's been going on the past 21 days since we last saw you.
Yeah, well, I mean, we basically were entering what I figured was going to be the crux as far as racing our weather window. You know, from Flagstaff to the Utah border and back to Flagstaff was where I figured winter was most likely to catch up with us. You know, we're trying to get north before that happens so we can run south ahead of winter without it, you know, biting us in the butt. That was the goal. And we didn't quite achieve that. We hit, you know, snow hit like the day before we were going to bounce at the Utah border. And so those first, we had like 90 miles or so of hiking in the snow from the Utah border all the way back to the north rim of the canyon, and some pretty cold camps and bivouacs in the snow. Then the canyon was nice, got down in there and it was warm, and when we got back, so the whole Kaibab Plateau was just snowy and cold and harsh, and when we climbed out of the canyon up into the Coconino, we finally got some free, you know, snow-free ground, and we're able to move a little bit better and just, I don't know, feel warmer and a little more relaxed. But then getting south through Babbitt Ranch and coming up through the San Francisco Peaks, we hit tons. It's like the most snow of the trip by a long shot, where we were post-holing for 11 miles through like shin-deep powder snow. I mean, just crazy slow going, and a couple of really cold bivouacs, and we made it to Flag.
So 2 nights ago, you set up camp really just below the Snowball parking lot, which is really the highest point in all of the AZ Trail. You're at about 9,300 feet there. Probably a foot or two of snow on the ground. Very cold night. It definitely dipped below freezing that night. So just tell us a little bit about the mental component as well as the physical component. You finish off 10 miles of post-holing throughout the day. You're exhausted. Your feet are cold, borderline in the danger zone. I mean, what do you do when you set up camp, and how do you keep yourself safe and stay motivated for the next day?
While we were post-holing, I felt like our only choice was to keep hiking through the snow as long as we could. I didn't know how long that would be, if it was going to be until dark or if we would actually hike out of it. I knew we wouldn't hike out of it till we hit the snow bowl, for sure, till that high point of 9,300 feet. And yeah, so we just kept going and going until it was just before dark. And for me, mentally at that point, I did kind of start hitting almost like a panicked state, and I really had to work hard to keep myself calm and to go through my mental checklist of what I would do as soon as we stopped hiking to warm my feet again. I thought about what was in my pack, you know, how I would lay down my sleeping pad and get on top of that and just, you know, get my dry socks out and everything I would need to do to get my feet warmed up again. And it was definitely very hard mentally, and we really thought we would just keep going because that would keep our feet warm, but as soon as the sun went down, that was not the case. They only got colder, so.
Yeah, that was the goal. I mean, I was, you know, tracking our progress on the GPS, and I knew that not too far ahead, the trail was going to be turning to the south and to the east, and we were going to be getting some southern exposure. And I was watching the knobs, you know, off to the west of us, and I could see that on the southern exposure, they were snow-free. They'd been melted out, and so I knew that was going to be the case for the peak that we were coming around, and it was just a matter of if we could get there or not. And you know, in instances like that, I just have this like bulldogish drive to just, you know, like shift down into this really kind of primal place and just push harder and faster and try to grind something like that out to get to a better spot. And as I was kind of doing that, Kathy started calling out to me and just let me know, you know, the state that she was in and that she was really having challenges. And I mean, I knew it was less than ideal. I knew we were nearing a kind of dangerous situation, and it seemed like she was chugging along behind me. And then when she called out to me a couple times, I could hear in her voice sort of her deteriorating mental situation, that she was getting to the point where she needed to deal with her feet, where she needed to take some actions. And at that point, I didn't know if we might be able to just change socks and have some hot food and keep going or what, but I knew we were going to have to stop. So as soon as I heard that change in her voice, just like she's saying she was doing, I started doing the same thing. Like in my mind, I just started going through, okay, here's our situation, our feet are getting dangerously cold, you know, dusk is settling in on us, our shoes are stiffening, starting to freeze, so what can we do? And I knew the only like sort of warm, dry place we were going to find was a melted out tree well. Unfortunately, just in the last, I don't know, mile or so, we had started seeing
to see some
melted out tree
ground.
wells. So I was starting to look ahead and look for bigger ones with a nice mature tree over them that would give us some sort of little nest we could set up. And I started talking to her, saying, okay, this is what we can do. We can find a tree well, we can bust our gear out, you start changing your socks, and I'll get, you know, the stove going and start making something hot. So finally we got to that point where we found a good tree well, and we hustled over to it, and like I laid my rain cape down and she got her pad out, and I pulled out an extra puffy and my wool shirt for her to wrap around her feet. You know, my toes were getting stiff and a little bit painful, but I really knew like exactly where they were, and I knew they weren't dangerous and they weren't going to be horribly uncomfortable, so I was able to kind of let mine go a little bit and get some hot water on, get the stove going. And it ended up being like the very last of our stove fuel. We got like one pot of hot water out of that last canister.
It's good karma right there.
Yeah, just barely. So that was great. I was amazed that we even got that out of that. And so then I'd made a couple of soda can stoves because we weren't able to find, you know, the fuel canisters. And so I bought some heat, and I'd been using that sometimes to milk the canister along. So when it was out, I made her hot coffee and got some food rehydrating and started another one of those going over the soda can stove, and started working on my feet and changing my stuff out, and got the sleeping bag out. And by then I was seeing pretty clearly we weren't going to be like gearing up and making another push. That mileage we had that day was just going to be it, because it was dangerous. We had to settle down and warm up, and
it probably took my feet about 45 minutes to get warmed up again and to stop being painful. And you asked, you know, mentally what kind of, you know, how we might deal with that mentally. And I remember saying to Ross, I'm just going to kind of go inside myself right now, and I'm going to, you know, just kind of do some self-talk and keep myself calm. I'm not going to scream, you know, I'm not going to scream in pain. I'm not going to writhe around in pain. I'm going to use some mental tools here to just keep myself calm, and that would only help the situation, and panicking wouldn't help it. So it was definitely a conscientious effort to keep myself calm and to kind of visualize warmth around my feet, warmth around Ross's feet, and trying to think of places where I've been warm and cozy, you know, sitting by my fireplace at home and that kind of thing. And during that time too, there's a little voice in the back of my head saying, "You're done with this. This is too hard. You know, I'm so tired of getting cold." But another voice saying, "No, you got this. You can do it. Calm down. Your feet will get warm again. There's no way you're gonna quit now that you're this deep in."
Yeah.
What did you put on your feet at that point? Do you remember? I'm just curious.
Oh, I had a dry pair of Smart Wool socks. They had a little bit of dampness in them, which wasn't ideal, but I put those on and
something warmer and drier than what you had on the previous
anything
10 miles opposed to.
And just I also had to get all my other layers on. It's just such a touchy balance to be layered up properly in that kind of weather. You don't want any kind of sweat going on, but you're still working hard, and post-holing is hard work. And so you try to be in the most minimal layers you can be in, so it wasn't just kind of covering and putting things on my feet, but also just getting my my wool leggings on and my down pants.
And we had our sleeping bag out, so she was in the bag, and then my extra puffy, I zipped it up and we put it over her feet.
Yeah, and our rain capes just to keep a little bit of wind out.
And then all my stuff was wet, so I pulled my socks off and I put merino wool glove liners over my feet. And then I had an arm sleeve I put on one foot, and I lost the mate to it. And then I had a buff, which I put on my other foot, and then my down booties, and then I crammed both of my feet into a dry bag. And then all that in the sleeping bag. And at the same time, I'm cooking over a soda can stove, so I'm having to hold, I had my mountaineering glove on, holding the hot pot over. So
such a great example of just your strength and fortitude and smarts in that situation to carry through and stay safe up there. That's
you
really
finally
cool.
come to a sense of just great relief, comfortable again, all is well. And we actually just had the coziest little nest there. That tall dry grass under the pine tree was really soft for a bed, and Ross just ended up pitching our tarp tent right over the top of us.
That's awesome.
Position we were in.
So for those of you just joining us, we're with Ras and Kathy, known as Ultra Pedestrian. They're southbound on their yo-yo attempt of the AZT Trail. It's a 1,600-mile trek from the Mexican border up to the Utah border and back down. So they have 600 miles to go. They're in Flagstaff for a quick visit, resupplying. They'll be back on the trail tomorrow morning. So we've had some great comments on Facebook. Leon Lutz, fellow beer brother, no questions, just a boatload of positive vibes for the both of them. Keep moving, Rob. Leon's awesome. Seven Hills Running Shop, one of your supporters in this journey.
Yes.
He's wondering if you're wishing Ultras made size 16 shoes. Ras wears size 15 shoes. Maybe one size bigger would be ideal.
Right.
Maybe something in the pipeline. Barb Cardno says, many blessings, great strength. Alan Daniel asks, we've hinted on this a little bit, but they're really wondering what your motivation is. I know that's a really broad question, and it can be very deep and philosophical, but for somebody who's not too familiar with this, and they're wondering, why the hell would you want to walk 1,600 miles, freeze your toes off, I mean, how would you respond? What's your motivation to do this?
I mean, there's a couple aspects of it. One is simply the fact that whether you're northbounding or southbounding the trail really changes your experience of the trail. I mean, it really seems like a different trail whether you're heading north or south. We really realized that coming across Babbitt Ranch southbounding. Before going northbound, you move around the San Francisco peaks. And when you hit Babbitt Ranch, it's kind of just this big flat area, and it looks nice because you think, okay, cool, easy miles. We can just smash miles in here and make some progress, but there's not a visual of your goal. Whereas southbounding, when you come past like the Moki station and you hit the beginning, you enter Babbitt Ranch, then you can see the San Francisco peaks, and you know exactly where you're going. You can see the gap that you're heading for, and you know where you're gonna be going for the whole next couple of days.
To see it from such a distance and then actually be right at the base of the peaks.
So every part of the trail is like that. So now that we're southbounding, we're covering the same trail that we've covered before, but it's a different experience. So it's really the only way to get a completely cohesive experience of the trail by doing it in one long push, so that you've got both the northbound and the southbound journey, in your immediate experience, so that you can see and experience that juxtaposition of doing the trail in its entirety that way.
It's definitely a very good question, and it's something that, as you're hiking those miles, as I'm hiking those miles, I think of that a lot. What's my motivation to do this? Why have I decided to, and what keeps me going? And a lot of it definitely is an inner exploration. How much can I handle out here? What are my limits? How can I, as the person I am, how can I help to motivate and inspire others that might have these kind of desires to go out and do this kind of thing?
Yeah,
it's
like
multifaceted.
You were talking about fastest known times versus only known times, and I mean that's a big part of it. Trying to do something that nobody has done before. Not really for the ego trip of it to be like, oh, I did something no one's done before, but to have that unique experience, to be like, okay, as far as we know, nobody has ever hit the Utah border and immediately turned around and started taking those southbound steps again. To me, that is just an amazing and magical moment, getting to take those steps that really no one has taken before, and to have that experience and get to do that. And it has, like, part of our goal is to sort of test and see where the limits of human endurance are. Kathy and I, neither of us is fast. We're, back of the packers as far as races go compared to other runners and stuff. But, and so in a lot of ways, I really feel like we're sort of everyday adventurers. I feel like the things that we're doing are not these out there things. I feel like they're within the realm of possibility for the vast majority of people on the planet. We're doing things that are essentially humanly possible, and that's really our goal, is to experience our humanity in its utmost by trying to perform out on the fringes of possibility.
Yeah, it's such a great way to put it. We were talking earlier that we have an amazing guest. We have Kathy and Ras, who are doing the 1,600-mile trip on the AZ Trail. I'm trying to run as fast as I possibly can, over 100 miles. We have another guest in the house, Chelsea Riley, who's training for the 5,000 meters or 10,000 meters to make it to the Olympics. And I think all of us would easily agree that we don't understand how the other is motivated and accomplishes what they do. So it's so fascinating to enjoy having this conversation. And then, my better half here, Christina, has hiked the AT Trail and the PCT Trail, and it's something that I can't even fathom doing, maybe one day. But so it's so great having this conversation, learning from each other. A couple comments. Adam Hassler says, stay safe, love the challenge. Another question we had on the scope, just sleep. How long do you, how much sleep do you get? I'm sure it's pretty variable, but talk about sleep. Is it good sleep? Do you dream? Do you get enough? Are you always wishing for more? Talk about sleep.
Early on, I had some interesting sleep experiences where a couple of different nights I just suddenly, woke up and looked up and didn't know where I was. Just like, what am I doing? Where am I? And when we were down south and sleeping just in our net tent, and those were some pretty kind of cool and powerful experiences. Just waking up and looking up at the stars and taking a few minutes to come back to reality and remember where I was. We generally hike till midnight, sometimes up to 2 a.m. and just make our camp and pretty much go right to sleep at that point. We don't, we've already eaten while we're on the trail. And then we sleep 6 or 7 hours really. We get a decent night's sleep and then spend that warm time in the morning, at least now that we're up here in these northern, more colder temperatures. And we take that time to dry out our tent and our sleeping bag and have a big breakfast and get our packs ready for the day. I feel like I'm getting enough sleep for sure. Sometimes I'll toss and turn if it's a really cold night, but for the most part I sleep pretty well. And I feel like Ross gets a good night's rest also.
We've had one or two nights where we were basically doing survival cuddling all night long.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
A couple where it was not quite feeling dangerous, but uncomfortably cold. And where we just had no choice. We just have a single sleeping bag that we share, that goes over the top of us and has a sheet on the underside that's not insulated. And so we're sharing body heat and we're both wearing puffy puffy pants and jackets, puffy suits. And so, I've had a couple nights where it was just pretty cold, survival cuddling all night through. It surprised me a couple times, there's been a couple nights where we've had very different sleep experiences. Like one night where it was blustery and there was some big gusts coming through, and my mind just couldn't rest. Like I was just constantly thinking that our shelter was going to blow down. So whenever I'd hear one of those gusts ramping up, I'd wake up and I'd sit up and I'd brace the trekking poles. And that night, Kathy's just slept so good. She didn't wake up. I asked her, in the morning, she's like, I got such a good night's sleep. And I was like, I don't feel like I was asleep at all. I was bracing the tent the whole night.
Sounds like me when we're camping.
Yeah. And then the other one too, then there was another time where I don't remember the specific circumstances, but I just passed out, and when I woke up I just felt refreshed and I'm like, oh, I feel so good. And she's like, I barely slept, I tossed and turned and I was just worrying about things. So yeah, it's interesting, the whole, in adventures of this sort, there's the external adventure, with the weather and the exertion and all of that, but there's the internal adventure too, and we're sometimes, on different paths on that. It can be interesting.
Yeah. Guys, if you're just joining us with Ras and Kathy of Ultra Pedestrian on their 1,600-mile AZ only known time attempt. Got a couple more minutes. Adam Hessler, good night. All the best with the last 600 miles. Getting a lot of well wishes on Periscope.
Nice.
Got any questions? We got a couple more minutes. Ask them on Periscope. We'll shoot them out. Another question we had was how long? So this is a 1,600-mile trip, somewhere between 80 to 90 days. How long did it take to plan the trip? And what was maybe the biggest challenge in planning such a challenging, logistically challenging journey?
Goodness, how long did it take to plan it? The planning didn't take all that long because we had thru-hiked the AZT one previous time. So I think we only changed one resupply. Other than that, we were just counting on the same resupplies we'd used before. So a lot of that made it easy. What the biggest challenge? The biggest challenge was balancing the very limited weather window during which a yo-yo attempt is even possible on the AZT, combined with working through the summer to come up with a budget to do this. That was really it. We really kind of were bumping up against a barrier there where we were needing to get on the trail, and we were also trying to finish up working any days we could up to that point to fatten up our budget so that we could, do it. We've got a bunch of great sponsors, and they really help make this possible. But all of our sponsorships are at the ambassador level, so we get free gear, which is a huge help. But we basically have to come up with the financial type, the monetary funding for our adventures on our own. And that was what happened here that was kind of interesting, is we had jobs for a weeding service over the summer, and we were just trying to milk as many days out of that right up to where we knew we had to hop in the car and head to the Mexico border to start this. So.
Yeah, that's great. And you're mentioning your supporters and sponsors. Ultra Running, Seven Hills Running Shop, Honey Stinger, Trail Butter. Yeah, I mean, talk a little bit about the role they play. You know, Ultra has hooked you up with some great shoes, especially on your journey north and south of Flagstaff, through the canyon, through the snow.
Right.
How's everything held up, and how you know? I'm curious about the Trail Butter as well. You know, it's a lot of calories in a small amount of food. Honey Stinger and Trail Butter, how do they play a role in your caloric intake? And that'll lead to the second part of this question that Desert Runner asked, and it's how many calories do you consume per day while you're out there doing these epic treks?
Yeah, I mean, Ultra has been great. They send us shoes out on the trail. So we both started off, Kathy started off with a brand new pair of shoes that Ultra Lone Peaks that Seven Hills Running Shop hooked her up with.
So awesome.
So we basically like stopped in at all these sponsors that we could on our way here as part of our road trip. Seven Hills is just such a unique shop. Their team, if you go to the Seven Hills Running Shop and look at it, it includes people like me and Heather Anderson and Seth Wolpen, you know, who are adventurers. We're ultra runners too, but we're like through hikers and mountaineers and adventurers. We don't fit neatly into just like the sponsored runner category per se. And then we've got great runners like Adam Huey and, you know, people that are fast, like elite front of the pack runners. It's just a really unique team with the Alicia, Margaret, Woodside, I don't know, just really cool collection of people. And Phil and the whole Seven Hills crew has just been so supportive and helped make all this happen. Ultra has given us shoes, sent us shoes on the trail, like at different points where we could pick them up. So we had some of the new insulated Neo shells to pick up here for the snowy half, and then we both have brand new.
The Neo shells were just wonderful for all that northern terrain, for the mud and the wet conditions and the snow.
Yeah, the challenge was, you know, they were great anytime we were moving. It was like making the transition from moving to being stopped was when we had challenges. And then, you know, Honey Stinger, what's really cool about that hookup is that they approached us, which was really cool. Like they had a broad enough vision to see what we were doing, you know, in our unique, weird, nerdy little niche of only known times, and to be like, that's something cool and unique that we want to support. And so they contacted us just a little bit ahead of time and were like, hey, you know, fill this out and pick out a bunch of stuff. And I mean, so we got like, I can't remember, I figured it out, but it was like 20 or 30,000 calories each from Honey Stinger.
And the Honey Stinger waffles and the energy shoes in particular is what we've been using, and they've been great.
Yeah, and talk about the Trail Butter. A whole lot of calories packed in one small, convenient package.
I love those. I've been a proponent of nut butters for years, since before Trail Butter came out. And I remember a couple of years ago when they first came out, and people were like, Ross, you know, you should totally be running for these guys. I mean, this is what you're always talking about. And it took a little bit for us to get linked up, and then they became a sponsor of Seven Hills Running Shop, of Team Seven Hills. And then I ended up talking to Jeff through them, and we kind of worked out, you know, a deeper relationship, which is going great. And so on our way through Portland, we stopped and met up with him, and just such a nice guy. And he like hops out of his car and has this huge box with just like
Expedition espresso. It's really good, crunchy bits of nuts and espresso pieces in it. And
I can't remember, are they 4 ounce?
I think they're 4 ounce.
They're really big, and they have a screw top. They're designed where you can, like, you know, squeeze them out and seal it up again. But I tend to have one for breakfast. I like having one first thing in the morning, like some instant coffee and this big thing of nut butter, and I can shuck it down in like a minute or so and just be like, boom, trail ready, like good to go that quick. And it's not only delicious but efficient, which for me is like the perfect combination.
Guys, if you're just joining us again, we're with Ras and Kathy of Ultra Pedestrian. 600 miles to go on their AZT Yo-yo attempt. It's a 1,600-mile journey. Just want to go a little bit more into the calories. You know, we were discussing earlier, a very rough estimate is to hike 1 mile takes 100 calories. You guys are trying to average somewhere around 27 miles per day. It's 2,700 calories just with the time you're moving. Doesn't count the other hours of the day. You hinted earlier that you've lost a number of pounds, somewhere in the 25-pound range. How do you go about that? How do you carry enough calories? Are you always playing catch up? Are you always hungry? Talk about calories and hunger during the AZ attempt.
Yeah, I mean, I've tried on other projects to do calories based on taking in the same amount of calories that I'm burning, and it just doesn't go. The math just doesn't go. Carrying that many calories and taking them in while still moving, you know, you quickly pass a point of diminishing returns, where you're either going to not be able to take in that many calories, or your mileage is going to suffer, you know, and decrease to the point where you're only covering the miles of the calories that you're taking in because you're carrying so much and spending so much time eating. So, yeah, I mean, part of my approach is knowing that I'm going to be working off of fat stores. And yeah, I was about 205 when we started, and I weighed myself earlier today, and I was right at 180. So we still have 600 miles to go, and I've consumed, you know, 2,500 pounds of stored fat. There's roughly 3,500 calories stored in a pound of fat. So someone with a calculator can figure out, you know, how much of my fueling has actually come from fat stores.
Yeah.
Kathy, I mean, you know, she's skinny right now. She wasn't plump to begin with anyway, but she's like getting bony and skinny. She has challenges. She had to have half of her pancreas removed about 7, 8 years ago. And that affects her. She can't metabolize fats very well at all, so she has to stick to a low-fat diet. So we're in kind of different pages there, because I'm focusing on eating,
fuel
yeah,
with high-fat foods.
right, and she doesn't have that option. So she has to just be kind of trickling in carbs all the time, and sort of managing and dealing with that. Yeah. So the closest I can come to an estimate, or as far as something functional for people to use to plan adventures, is planning on 2 pounds of food per day per person. That seems to be fairly sustainable and functional. Depending on the type of food it is, you can get more or less calories. But yeah, I don't know. We're running big calorie deficits every day. It would be really hard. It'd be really hard to guesstimate. I mean, I know that there are days when I'm taking in 3,500 or 4,000 calories, but it's not every day. It's not consistently.
It gets easier as the miles go on, you know, adjusting to not having as much food and to dealing with it on both a mental and physical level. I feel like I've lost weight, but I still feel very energetic and strong. I feel like I'm getting stronger as I go, rather than feeling any kind of weakness from hunger or lack of enough calories and energy. I also feel like it's this time period that we're focusing on, and that afterwards, you know, I'll be able to eat better and eat well and gain some weight back, and that this is just a focused period of time that there's, you know, you just go without.
Yeah.
So.
This is another great example of what the mind and body are capable of when it's asked to and when it's required to.
Yes.
You know, I can relate to that in my 100-mile races.
Yeah.
And it's just on a different scale, but totally relatable. It's fascinating what the mind and body are capable of. You guys passed through Flag on day 37. You hit the Utah border at day 48. You're at 58 days southbound on your way to Mexico. The Desert Runner, you both look great. You know, optimistically, 22 days from now, day 80, you'll be standing on the Mexican border. Talk about what's in the future. You're about to leave Flagstaff, head south into the White, down through Pine to the White Mountains, into hopefully warmer, drier weather. Talk about your motivation, how you're feeling, how are your spirits right now?
I guess I feel a little anxious about it. I definitely noticed some anxiety today over going back out mainly dealing with the cold temperatures that we may have for the next, I don't know, 5 days or something. And then I do think it will start getting warmer for sure. I feel I'm constantly running numbers in my head, hours, miles, days, you know, and just strategizing and a lot of inner stuff going on, thinking about the rest of the trip. Also looking forward to, and there's areas that I can't wait to get back into that I enjoyed passing through the first time, and I'm really excited about being able to go back through them again.
Yeah, I mean, the cold is daunting, I'll admit that too, you know. I mean, we've had these couple of really brutally cold nights and some rough bivouacs, and I'm looking forward to moving through the next 6 to 10 days, which should be some of the coldest stuff, and getting into a little bit warmer weather. But you know, this whole thing is daunting. I mean, we came out here intending to do something difficult, knowing that it would be difficult. It would definitely be disappointing on a level if it were easy. It'd be nice, sure, it'd be nice to just come out, cruise it out, yeah, 69 days, woo, that would have been sweet. But that's not really reality, that's not how life goes. And we knew there'd be struggles and challenges, and you know, I don't know, there's, in adventures like this, there's this dichotomy or a dialectic where it seems like the two experiences couldn't coexist, but something can be like wonderful and beautiful and can brutally suck at the same time.
Totally.
And this trip is definitely accomplishing that, you know, a surprising number of times. But I can be in the middle of this moment where just everything hurts and it seems hopeless and it seems impossible, and yet I can laugh at that and literally enjoy it. And I don't even know what that means about me or my well-being or state of mind or anything like that. But it's part of my experience.
Yeah, you certainly learn a lot through the darkest times.
Yeah.
I learned that a lot in the last couple years of my life, for sure. Hiker 210 wants to know what your favorite part of the AZ Trail is, if there is a favorite part. So many great, so diverse over the
very, very diverse.
800 miles one way.
So diverse. I really enjoy the Gila River Canyon area. It's one of my favorite areas. The Grand Canyon, of course, is so awesome that it's a whole different kind of experience because the trail is so well maintained and the busiest area of the entire trail. We go days without seeing anyone, but in the Grand Canyon, you see people and so well marked. You can just kind of turn your brain off and go, and so that's really nice. And I enjoy the canyon because of that. I loved the northern Kaibab Plateau. There's some just amazing areas up there, and
you happen upon some cowboys and ranchers rounding up the cows up there.
So fun to see the real working cowboys on the Babbitt Ranch, which is just an amazing spot. So yeah, that was fun, and we had what we thought was maybe one of the lead ranch hands stop in his pickup truck and ask us some questions, and that was really cool to be amongst the people of Arizona.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, he was cool. I mean, he was like just everything you would picture, like
he
dusty
had the
and smoky and wrinkled.
Levi jacket and
but just no nonsense. Just pulled up to a stop and, you know, how long you folks been out? Well, what do you do about water? It was cool though, because when he was asking questions, it didn't have that touristy vibe of like, oh, how in the world do you do this? You know, you could hear or see that in his brain, he was like really kind of thinking out, like, how would you do this? Like maybe he was imagining doing it on a horse or something different, but you could see that he was metabolizing it mentally, and he was really kind of chewing on it and looking at the how-to of it.
The ranch is such an open landscape in comparison to really everywhere else on the trail, and he had driven by us hauling horses, and I think they were rounding up cattle or something, and seen us and waved in a friendly way, but went on his way doing his work and had a whole crew of other cowboys with him. And then a couple hours later, you know, he could still see us hiking along, moving along and hiking through the ranch. and he had to go do some other work and drove by us the second time, and that's when he stopped and said, "How many miles are you planning on hiking today?" And you know how so it was just a really fun experience.
And then I think my favorite part of the trail is the Wilderness of Rocks.
Yes.
Near Mount Lemmon, south of Summer Haven. That's just a really cool area. And it's really accessible too. You could go to Summer Haven and it's only 5 or 6 miles to get up into it, so you could easily do some nice little lollipops and tour around and come back through, or drop down to Hutch's Pool and have a nice overnight. But
Sabino Canyon is really lovely.
Yeah, I really like
Very
that area
scenic.
a lot.
Yeah. Cool, guys. We're gonna wrap up with Kathy and Ras here in a minute. My final question is, you know, this is a life-changing event that you guys are doing right now. You're gonna be out there for 80+ days. You're hiking 1,600 miles through really difficult conditions, a lot of emotions. What happens when it's all over? What happens when you hike the 3 miles from the Mexican border back to your car and you head home? You know, I've struggled in the past accomplishing a large goal and struggling to find my purpose and sense of self after. Is there any fear? Are you just going to start planning the next trip? What's going to happen after this 1,600-mile trip?
Yeah, I mean, I'm already planning trips, and I mean, my brain is just always working on this. It's almost like a screensaver mode. If I'm not actively using my mind to do something, it just goes into scheming on adventures. I'm pretty much just always thinking about running and hiking, and so we were already had like most of our book finished about our previous Arizona Trail through hike, and obviously this is going to add a whole other huge section to that. So that's going to be one of the big goals, is finishing up our book Across Arizona as One and getting that published and released, and yeah, and looking on to the next thing. We might I've got a bunch of smaller projects in the 1 to 2 to 400 mile range, and I know Kathy was talking about a couple in that 200 mile range too. So the next thing may not be something on this grand a scale, but then a couple adventures beyond that might be something even bigger. We're definitely open to possibilities, and just looking for unique ways to test ourselves and see what we can do.
I do tend towards some of that kind of a letdown feeling, like, wow, that big. I mean, I've never done anything quite to this scale, but I know if I've been training for an ultra race and then I go do the race and then, feel, well, what's next? For me, it is important to have that next goal in mind, and so I do have some smaller goals that I, think about while I'm out hiking, and that I will definitely look forward to getting back home and spending some time with our daughter Angela, who will be leaving for the Peace Corps at the beginning of February, and so I'll have a month and a half or so to spend some time with her, and that will be my big distraction and I think joy when we return.
It's great to have that. Look forward to.
Yeah.
Awesome, guys. Well, thanks everybody for joining. Again, Kathy and Ras of Ultra Pedestrian. They have some great sponsors and supporters. Ultra Running, Seven Hills Running Shop, Honey Stinger, Trail Butter. Thanks to my better half, Miss Christina Maurer, for joining us.
Thanks,
if anybody wants to find you guys, let them know where they can find you and follow you on this journey.
Yep. Ultrapedestrian.com is our blog, and if you go there, the most recent post has links to our Facebook. You can also just Google or Bing, however you want to search, Ultra Pedestrian, and our Facebook and Twitter and YouTube accounts will come up, and you can follow us there. We're doing updates to Facebook and Instagram, and we're posting videos to YouTube, so those would be the main places to follow along.
Awesome. Well, I've said it before, I'll say it again, you guys are an incredible inspiration, a ton of positive vibes on the Periscope and Facebook. I think everybody is just really intrigued and continue to be inspired by what you're doing. You're getting people out, you're making people dream, and can't thank you enough. So.
Thanks. That's the goal, I mean, that's what it's all about. It's about, the mutual inspiration. I find that over and over again in the ultra running scene, the trail running scene, the thru hiking scene, backpacking, just adventuring on a large scale. where somebody tells me about something they do and it's like, oh my gosh, and it gives me these ideas, you know, these little sparks go off, and I talk about one of my adventures and somebody else comes up with this tangential idea off of that, and it just creates this atmosphere of mutual inspiration where people are kind of egging each other on to these different incredible achievements, and that's what it's all about. So, you know, thanks to you and Christina for being a huge part of that community and process, and for your generosity and kindness and hospitality. You know, somebody asked last time and we didn't get a chance to answer it, how much you rely on the kindness of strangers. And that's a great question in so many levels. I mean, because on one level, I'd have to say 0. You know, you can't rely on the kindness of strangers. You have to, like, have your food caches ready and mail them out ahead of time, and you have to have the gear to get through. But there's no way we could have done this without the kindness of both friends and strangers. I mean, you know, trail angels have left stashes of soda and energy drinks and fruit and water for us, and strangers have invited us into their home.
AZT trail stewards leave jugs of water at a lot of the different trailheads in the very remote areas where we aren't able to access water.
Yeah.
And that's huge.
So, you know, complicated answer, but a great question is we couldn't do it without the kindness of both strangers and friends.
Yeah, love it. That's a great way to end. Thanks everybody for joining us.
Thank you.
Hopefully we'll catch up with Kathy and Ras sometime in the near future. Safe travels. We'll see you on the other side.
Blessings.